This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Courtney McKenna for the first time. And how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm in lovely New Hampshire. We got a little bit of snow on the ground. Um,
Nice.
but I wanted to mention first that we are on, yeah, we don't have as much snow as we used to.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure.
uh, we are on Newsly, which is an app you can get in your iOS store, and then we are a featured podcast, so you can listen to Newsly and listen to this episode about a couple hours after it'll get created. And if you use coupon code GHOST, you can get 1 month free premium subscription, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. Now, this is the first time you've been on the show, so welcome to the Family
Yeah,
Electric Ghost show.
thank
And
you. Happy to be
we
here.
just like to talk. Oh, it's awesome talking to new people all the time. And we started, with musicians. So it's always great to have musicians. We've opened it up to other types of people, but
Yeah,
musicians, are kind of our first loves of who we started the podcast back in 2016. Initial
nice.
Fam Electric Ghost podcast have been around since then. But you're a Los Angeles-based artist, and you're also a marketer. But I
Yes,
figured
I
I might
am.
talk about like your new album that or EP that's coming out, and we can phase into some of the other things. But your
Sure. Yeah.
single like CSR, and you got an EP coming out in summer 2023 with
hmm
your backing band Sweet Mitts, and maybe can. First thing I always ask musicians before we even get to that is like, what age did you get into music? At what age
Oh
did you get into
man.
music?
Well, I guess music at what level? I started, singing in church when I was like 3 years old, and just ever since then, I've always loved music. I've always loved singing. I was in band throughout middle school, high school. Before that, I played the cello for, I think, maybe a few months. It was very short, but I played clarinet for 8 years. I was in choir. I did like 1 year of musical theater. And yeah, it really, I tried to learn the guitar in high school and it was too hard, but I was, already doing all the other music stuff and writing a little bit and starting to perform out. And then it wasn't really until after college when I moved to New York City that I realized, like, okay, this is something, that I could actually do, because I started meeting artists that were putting music out there and, making careers out of it. So it was like I graduated with a marketing degree, moved to New York City, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to start my life as a musician. Pretty much. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
awesome.
very short condensed version.
Yeah, I started on a woodwind. I started on a clarinet as well.
Oh, cool.
And
Nice.
then I realized it's like I can, unless I want to be like a jazz person, I can't
Yeah.
really write on it. I wrote stuff
Mhm.
on it. I actually tried to. I actually wrote, but then I was like, I need to actually use a writing instrument. So I tried a guitar and I couldn't get it. But
Yeah,
I
that's
seem
tough
to
when you
be
first
more,
start.
yeah, I seem to be more competent at keyboards. So I was able just to jump on a keyboard and I was able to understand it. And my brother
Yeah.
actually picked up the guitar. He actually got really good at it. I'm
Oh,
like, wow. We
nice.
created a band and we were playing, and he went off to something else, became a lawyer, and I got into IT, but I still kept doing music since I was
Yeah,
17, 55. I never stopped. But
amazing.
I think it's just something that if you really, whether you make money at it or not, I just never stopped, and I found different ways to get into things, and I'm still
Yeah,
doing the work because it's not work; it's like fun to me. So it's like I do
totally.
it whether it make any money or not.
There's so much to explore too, it's like I just got a piano last year. I had a little keyboard before, and before that I had a MIDI keyboard. So I graduated. I found a free piano on Facebook Marketplace and it worked. I drove to Long Beach to test it out because I was like, I'm not going to pay to have this giant thing moved to my house if it's not
It's
going to
out of
work.
tune. It doesn't sound like
Yeah.
anything.
It was a little out of tune for sure, but all the keys worked and it was in pretty good shape. So yeah, I've been learning piano, and I used to have a drum kit in my practice space, and now I've been exploring. I have a new practice space that I haven't been to yet, but I've been kind of talking to some friends about joining that. So Yeah, I mean, I love songwriting, and I think just any way that you can express yourself through music. There's so many different platforms, but I think you can probably relate, like starting out with a wood instrument. It's just like we're so connected to our own breath when we're
Yeah,
playing or singing, and I feel like that for me, it was just like so. It still is today. I feel like it's so profound. It's like, um,
I like to use breath
yeah.
controllers. So they have some
Mhm.
really modern MIDI breath controllers that you can
Oh,
bring. You can actually Yamaha and Roland make these breath controllers that are amazing. Some of them
cool.
like have really good capability, and they can. Some of them even use like MPE, which is like the new MIDI. They can. It's super expressive. Like the new form of MIDI called
Wow.
MPE can actually take in all kinds of stuff. It can take in like polyphonic aftertouch systems that actually can wiggle a piano key, and if you wiggle it, it actually has a behavior. So it can
Wow.
actually be, you can throw like vibrato into it. So if you have a wind type of instrument and you
Hmm.
have an MPE type of MIDI, it will take in what you're doing with your tongue, what you're doing with your breath, all those things, and
Wow.
give you that full artistic control. So you're not just on and
Wow.
off. The
Yeah.
idea with MPE is like you're not just an on and off button. You actually have
It feels
levels
more
of expression
organic.
or
Yeah.
organic, like you actually were on a fiddle and
Hmm.
playing with the string, or you're on a wind instrument and you're playing with your mouthpiece and you're doing different things that a sax player or a clarinet player would do. So
Wow.
I think there's cool opportunities in the future where it's not just all DJs and
Hmm.
CDJs. There's all these advances like with MPE and expression type of synthesizers that have like all kinds of capability to
Wow.
allow you to become a better musician. So you can actually do everything that somebody on Stradivarius is doing. You can
Yeah.
actually do on your keyboard. You can
It's
do
wild.
all kinds of like, levels of pressure, all kinds
Hmm.
of the different things you can program into that based on your feel as a musician.
Yeah.
And I think that human touch is never going to get replaced by like AI to me.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree. I think, oh man, that's a whole discussion. But yeah, I just think that music is like, the direct connection to the soul, and whatever you believe, whether that's, spiritual or not, it feels pretty undeniable to me. So, you know,
So
it's
yeah, what do you? I
great.
guess I kind of going down the rabbit hole, but I was
Yeah.
talking to a couple people, and there was this person that's not really, not a musician, but they were a technician, they were a
Mm.
technologist, and they were
Yeah.
making the argument that AI could totally replace like 80% of musicians in the world by just putting out stuff. And I said, well, yeah, if you want to just put out clone type of music that
Right.
we have today already, we have
Mhm.
some people who just clone other
Mhm.
people's work, or
Yeah.
or a producer and just keep on using the same techniques and it
Right.
sounds all the same. Yeah, you could have that, but are you ever going to get a Jim Morrison or a Bob Dylan or a Hendrix or a Nat King Cole in that kind of environment if that's what you're going to do? I don't. I think there's always going to be a human touch.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, there's definitely like, it- I didn't go to school for music, so I think that I have my own approach to it, and I've been taking music theory lessons, which has helped me to sort of find more options when it comes to songwriting and that sort of thing. But um, I do know that that's one way of doing it, is just like copying other people. But in the same way, it's like all of my inspiration comes from somewhere. Like I've learned it from somewhere. So even though if
Yeah,
I'm not directly or consciously copying somebody else, it's still already been done in one way or another. So I think
but
that
yeah,
I think AI can do a lot, but at the end of the day, like you said, it is just mimicking and putting something else out there that's already been done. And if you believe in that there's a higher power of any kind out there, I think that, it's easier
like the
to.
muse. Yeah, if you think about
Yeah.
musicians, like, we tend to think in kind of mystical ways. Like you think about
Mhm.
if you think about like Bob Marley, he
Yeah.
very spiritual. Like even
Mhm.
Stevie Wonder, super spiritual in their music. So they're
Yeah.
kind of taking the muse or a universal thing, right? I don't
Yeah.
think that a computer is ever going to have
No,
something as
absolutely
soulful
not.
or spiritual as a Bob Marley.
It
It's just not going to happen because it's not human. So
Yeah.
I don't think it can get to that kind of spiritual or muse inspired type of
Hmm. Yeah.
ability.
It would be like a false light sort of situation.
Yeah,
It's
maybe
like,
it would mimic Marley, but it wouldn't become like a new that was new.
yeah.
What he
Yeah.
did was the thing about music that's interesting. Nothing has we everything has been done before, but
Hmm.
reggae, it was when he did his stamp on it. It's very uniquely his. Right,
Yeah.
it ended up taken from soul and taken from other things. But I think what it is when a musician, you take the blues. Everybody approaches the blues. It's the same form.
Right.
Sometimes you talk about the same thing going to the crossroads or doing something in a certain kind of Mississippi Delta type of
Yeah.
idea, right? But
Hmm.
Stevie Ray Vaughan doing Voodoo Child versus Hendrix doing Voodoo Child, it's the same
Very
song, but it
different.
doesn't sound the same
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it really the interpretation of the musician has a lot. Like a Curtis Mayfield, his approach is different than a Hendrixian approach. Is different
Yeah.
than a Prince approach. Is different than a Jimmy Page approach. They
Yeah.
all are great musicians and they could all play the same songs, but they don't sound the same when they play them.
Yeah. No, I think that one of the reasons why we feel so connected to music is because at a soul level, we're like vibing with it, we're connecting with it. If you try to like connect to something that's not authentically real, people can sense that. It might not be so easy at first. I think we're all going to probably be fooled more often than not when it comes to AI,
Mhm.
because it is so new and it's mind blowing. But just like anything else, like humans adapt. AI
Yeah.
is really smart, but
Well, I think what
yeah.
happens even today, like I think there were some numbers out there where a lot of music fans are kind of turning away from
Mhm.
some of the modern music, and they said that like the songs from the 90s and the 80s and the 70s are actually getting played more. And
Yeah.
people are starting to realize is like what's about that era? It's the era of the singer-songwriter, right? It's the
Mhm.
era where the Beatles did Sgt. Pepper's, and then you have albums and then you're like, like Tapestry,
Totally.
or you have like the Bob Dylans of the world,
Well, and
the
it's
Bruce
like all
Springsteens of the world.
live
Yeah,
players on those albums, It's like through the 80s and even into the 90s, you have full orchestras backing like Michael Jackson or Madonna,
yeah.
It's like
There's something
nothing.
about it. It's more substantial. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's also the thing is like when you actually construct a song and it's not just clips. Like I think the thing that people I kind of veer away from the DAW just because I like jazz fusion and I like jam band, like Allman Brothers type stuff, or like
Yeah.
Steely Dan. I like something when it's composed
Yeah.
where it actually has structure. You have an intro, you have like a chorus, you have like a fill two.
Form.
You have a
Yeah.
structure. If you go
Mhm.
back and listen to the 70s, you listen to a Carpenter song, it's full of changes. It
Yep.
has structure.
I love
And
the
I think that's
Carpenters.
what some of the people yeah, the people today on some of the modern songs, they're all beat driven. They sound great. They maybe sound too perfect because I
Mhm.
always
Mhm.
point out to when I'm working with somebody, like Exile on Main Street. Could
Yeah.
I actually take Keith Richards, what he's doing on Exile on Main Street, and put that in a DAW and track it? You can't. It won't
No.
work.
No, I love
So
it when yeah, it's like the the famous thing I always think about is like Rolling Stones is like, "Time is on my side," and they're playing the tambourine like totally offbeat, It's like it's so classic.
yeah, it's just they're just kind of it's like the kind of ragged Keith approach is it's not
Mhm.
exactly on time. It's kind of
Mhm.
like jazz. It's a lot like jazz. A lot about what he's doing is very jazz and very R&B and very soul. Where Curtis Mayfield is not. He's kind of all over the map, but it sounds great. You listen to like anything he did, like Superfly, and it's
Mm.
very organic. It's very kind of fusion based. Even Hendrix with Mitchell, the drums, it's like it's very much jazz oriented, and it's not
Yeah.
set on a structure. Right, it kind of bounces from different timing. It will go into multi polyrhythms. It will go into key changes. It will change rhythm. It will change timing. And
Yeah.
today, there's people who are so into like, I'm going to stay at 160 or 200. I'm going to stay at that BPM. I'm going to stay in the same key. I'm going to do it. It's like, what? Why? Because
Yeah.
the machine's telling you to do that doesn't mean it's perfect. I mean, well, actually, if it's perfect, it's probably not the best thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because I think that it just goes to show you, how dynamic we are as human beings. It's like some people really love that sort of striving for perfection, but it's like everyone has a different definition of what perfection is, and
Yeah.
some people resonate more with like the Keith Richards and the sort of more
With
soulful stuff.
Ramshackle. Yeah, more
Yeah.
soulful, but also think about it. Like I was watching an interview with Elton John on Yellow Brick Road,
Okay.
and he recorded this like in a mansion, and the whole band recorded it. It's all maybe the third take. He said we didn't do more than a third take on any of these songs. They were all live recorded by the
Amazing.
band in a mansion, like with the studio being brought into the mansion. And Peter Gabriel did that with So. He actually got a house and recorded it with a bunch of musicians in a house for like a year.
Life goals right there.
And yeah, and like the band, the Big Pink, was recorded, in the basement. The basement
Upstate.
tapes are all done in the basement in this house in New York. And there's something to be said when I always show like young musicians, like listen to the band on like the basement tapes. That is like Americana, authentic, real music with Bob Dylan, this kind of stream of consciousness coming up with all these tracks. And it's hard to say that stuff today is any better than that. It's like some of that stuff is so gold, it's hard to get better than what he did.
Yeah. I mean,
I tried to argue with people.
One thing I've been really thinking about this year is like, what is devotion to your craft? Because like, I think that's one thing that you see Bob Dylan, you see all these artists, it's just they've written so many songs or they've played so many different guitar solos. And so, for me, like I think one of the disadvantages I've had by like not going to music school is that I didn't get that like military training that it seems like a lot of my peers have where, you're waking up, you're playing all day, you're playing with people. And so I've been working on that, as I can. But I've really had to carve out time for my own practice, and whether that's writing or practicing music, singing. And, one day, like, it would be amazing to just go in and record with a bunch of amazing musicians. I'm sure the inspiration would just be like fireworks. Yeah.
Well,
And that's kind of what we did with
band to talk about, like you do work with that.
Yeah. So Sweet Myths has been my backing band for the past year. And we've definitely gotten to the point where we're gelled. Like when we played so many shows this summer, especially, we were, really like on fire, I think, when we went into the studio. And we had like one rehearsal and setup day when we like set up all the gear and laid down just a take. And then we did overdubs for each instrument. So, that was something I've been wanting to do for a while. Yeah. Because, the last 3 songs I put out.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that method. Yeah. That method is awesome.
It's very much like a live track feeling, but then it, just being able to focus on like each instrument individual, I think it still like gives it a little bit of a studio quality of tracking,
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was different. The last 3 songs I put out was more of like me working directly with the producer. So we also did like one instrument at a time, but we started with MIDI drums and then like worked on those to get them to feel a little bit more organic. But there's just something like there's more restrictions when you're playing with a full band, and I think that is something that makes it really magical actually in the end, because that like
I think the limitations.
Yeah, everything in there is raw.
As a musician, after like one of the things I learned as a musician is like limitations sometimes are like the best thing, right? Sometimes like if I purposely only use an 8-track recorder, like I only can do 8 tracks, right? I'm using an analog machine that can only do so much. It has restrictions. Like I got a Moog analog drum machine, can only do 8 steps. That's all it can do. But then within that restriction, you can get super creative. You can say, "Oh, I'm going to have have an LFO run or an envelope run, and then suddenly those 8 steps sound like 256 steps. And so you
Yeah.
use the limitation and you use the technology like CV
To
instead of
get
MIDI
creative.
to get creative. And I run in like, a sample and hold circuit or a random voltage generator into something. And then I'm using analog drums, and it actually sounds like a real person because it's randomly bouncing around based on a random voltage coming from a Euro rack that makes it have like a real feel. And so if I just kept it to 8 steps, it would sound very industrial. But if I start
Mm,
introducing envelopes and LFOs and sample and holds and all kinds of other things that you can trick into it, that's my whole thing. Is like I'm a very experimental
cool.
musician, like to play with
Yeah.
old analog systems that to get like life out of a machine. That
Mm,
the analog is still a machine, but it
yeah.
has a little bit more life than digital, in my opinion. What you can do to it can actually a Moog bass can sound like a real bass player playing a bass. Like
Mm,
if you use it correctly, it can channel
yeah.
what a real bass player can do. And so that being a
Interesting.
single person as a musician, that I've
Hmm.
chosen the analog to kind of give it more life.
Yeah. It's probably a little warmer.
Yeah, it just has more of that feel. But it's just you can do anything. I have digital stuff, and it, like whatever serves the song. So if people say, "Oh,
Hmm.
you're a
Hmm.
purist," it's like, no, I have a Kai MPCs and stuff. I can go and do clip based stuff, and I will do it when that
Yeah.
serves the song. So if I
Yeah.
have a song that I want to be kind of modern, I'll use like my Akai equipment, and it's clip
Mm,
based. It's like an Ableton type structure. But if I
sure.
want to do something that's more jazz, I'll go to a multi-track and just play a Moog into it and
Yeah.
multi-track. And it's just kind of whatever
Cool.
you feel that day. And I think as a musician,
Yeah.
what do you feel about like cross genre? Do you like to do cross genre type things, that kind of mixing different genres?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm definitely exploring. Like right now, I'm in this 3-month workshop to write my first full record, which is really exciting. I have like an acoustic project out that's 9 songs, so technically that's a full record. But
Yeah.
that's it was more of a recording project because we did use tape machines, and so it has this very like vintage analog sound to it. And I think this is what we were talking about before we got on air, but basically it's so funny because I was so excited and really proud of that project. Like it was just me and the guitar, and Will McNair, he goes by Sermon 3 Records in New York, recorded it for me. And he had just, been dreaming of getting his analog setup for years. So I was the first person that he got to like test it out on.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah. And so some of the songs that I shared with people after we finished them, the responses I got were like, oh, this is just a demo, right? I was like, nope, this is the
I think
final
people
thing.
are kind of.
They're,
I think
they
people
were
are
looking for
so.
that polished, like, yeah, very modern,
Yeah, I
crisp
think
sound.
we're kind of in the age. I like Nebraska. It was done on a Tascam
Mm,
4 tracker in a hotel with like Bruce Springsteen. It's very lo-fi,
while I was on
right?
tour,
And a lot of
yeah,
people,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that is classic. I like it. I like a lot of lo-fi bands. I like the original
Mm,
REM on like IRS records. They were very lo-fi. Like the replacements, like Tim before they got on Warner Brothers. I have a habit of listening to a lot of kind of old school bands, like the Velvet Underground. To me,
oh,
that's
yeah.
not super high quality. It's very kind of low, kind of fi indie. And
Mhm.
there's a place where
Yeah,
that people still, and then there's
yeah,
a lot of people's ears have been kind of trained by the DAW, so
yep,
they want polish. That doesn't mean
yeah,
that your stuff isn't good. It's just their ears have been trained to hear
right,
that. But I still think that what you have, the right audience hears it. You worldwide, you could find different audiences all over the world that would probably dig what
totally.
you did. That
Yeah, and,
probably I wouldn't. I just because a couple of people wouldn't get it, think that that's the only opinion.
right. Yeah, no, I'm really proud of it. I think, one of the songs that or actually 2 of the songs that I recorded originally just acoustically in that, 9-track album or project, we are recreating with the full band. And then it'll be through the process that I shared with you, where we go in and do like a first take live track and then overdub. And that I think is a good mix, because my friend Mario, he's mixing, mastering everything for us. And he has kind of this like pop sensibility for vocals, which for me is really important because I want people to be able to like hear the lyrics. But you definitely still get like that live band sound. And so I think it's a good transition. I think that the next stuff that I write for this full record, it's going to be a little bit more dynamic as far as like the sound goes, like you were saying, cross genre.
More layered. More
layered.
layered.
And that's just because like a lot of the different influences that I love, I'm writing first with like the intention of creating this concept album, and also really like honoring each one as like a story, so it's like some of them, like I really love ESG and like more of that stripped down sort of disco rock. And then all the stuff that I've been performing is a little bit more like country blues-esque.
I love country
somewhat
blues.
Grunge inspired. Yeah. So, I think
Nirvana-like or Hole-like or like Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah, a little Nirvana. I feel like one of the runs we did for the ballad I put out last year was definitely like Radiohead inspired. So
Radiohead, that's a great band. That's
a
great
for
band,
sure.
because they mix a lot. They do a lot of layers. They do a lot of analog, a lot of modular, and a lot of progressive rock and experimental rock. And what I liked about Radiohead is a super progressive experimental band that actually had success with experimentation. And
they always
like
were just
people would say
creating.
that that you can't do what they did. Like they had songs that are very long. They said, well, you can't have a song this long and have it be a hit. And then they did. Right? And so they kind of broke rules, but a lot of people have broken those rules. And Freddie Mercury broke that rule. The Eagles broke that rule. And like the idea that your songs can only be 2 minutes, if you think about it, there's a lot of songs that are longer than 2 minutes.
Sure.
Paul McCartney and Wings, they look how many songs he has that are, in the Beatles. They're not short. And when you get to the end of their career, Abbey Road, it's the beginning of that kind of progressive era where you can have these songs that have these different changes and different parts. You can see
it's
on
like
Abbey
3
Road,
songs in one sometimes.
you see that structure. You get bands like Yes and Genesis do that, and Pink Floyd do it. So, Pink Floyd, how big are they? And they have these big, epic, long songs. They're like operas. They're rock operas. And so that genre to me is never going to go away. It just depends on how good an artist you are and can it connect. There are rock operas that never connected, but there are ones that did connect. And it's just really how can you reach it, because that stuff works really good live. And I was going to say about your first record, like if you ever wanted to do an unplugged, that would be like a perfect set of material to do like an unplugged. When you get to that arena, because people like that. I mean, people have been doing Electric Lady shows where they just go and they do like an unplugged version of the record. And they may just have people playing like live violin with an acoustic guitar and a piano and just stripping it down. There's a market for people like that,
I love playing shows solo, not all the time, but it's a nice change, because sometimes like playing with drums, I mean, it's really fun, but it also can feel like I'm screaming, because it's so loud.
It's loud.
It depends on the stage venue too. And like how they have it set up. But sometimes when it's just, me and the guitar player doing a duo set or something like that, it's like, I really just get to focus on singing. And that's really why I learned the guitar in the first place, was just so that I could accompany myself singing. So
do like a tiny desk for NPR, you'll do that. I like those type of platforms when people can really see like a musician. If you get these big festival stages, that's cool. You get in front of tons of people.
Totally.
But when you get into like a 300 seat club or even like a 50 seat club, and you just get intimate with I used to go to New York and play these small places, maybe 300, 400 people at the max. And it was just, cool to be able to get the reaction of the people, and it's not
It
just
feels
be
really
a
interactive.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can really, as a musician, I was wondering how you feel when you play live. Do you like that kind of audience feedback? Does it help you with your
Oh,
performance?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why it was so weird for me. Like I've done live streaming
Hmm.
performances and that sort of thing. Uh, it feels so weird
No
because
feedback. No
yeah,
feedback.
like even like, we've done busking and that sort of thing, and I love it. Like if people aren't paying attention to me, I'm like, "Hello, I'm here." Like I'm gonna give you something to react to. And I don't know, it's just I think of it as a game. It's fun, and I think people I just think of, I like to make noise sometimes, but for the most part, I have to believe that, like, if I'm creating, if I'm putting it out there, I'm, like, blessing you with this sound because this is not yes, it's coming from me, but, like, I didn't just get this voice. Like,
Yeah,
this is a gift,
it's
you
channeling
know?
from the muse. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
there's a muse.
Mhm.
I like a lot of times I've decided to do is I do like live recording sessions. I just go live and I just let the muse kind of come through me. And
Mhm.
I get so into it that I don't worry about the audience. I'm so into playing my Hammond
Yeah.
B3 or my thing that I let the creative process and I just film it. And I found
Nice.
that live recording has a
Mhm.
kind of benefit. I was reading about Frank Zappa, and he liked to live
Mm.
record stuff, and he would just
Cool.
take the tapes back to his house and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, this goes with this, and this goes with that." And Neil Young used to do that too with Crazy Horse. They would just go and they would tape everything, and then they
Yeah.
go back and say, "Hey, this goes with this, and this goes with that," and they actually find the songs. Then they would go
That's
work on
cool.
them, and it's another way of kind of driving. Like if you sit there and you're trying to write, like if you go live on your thing, it just forces it to you don't start and stop all the time. You just kind of
Yeah.
go with an idea and see where it goes. And you never
That's
know as a musician where you're gonna go, you know?
totally. I mean, that's how I've been writing up until this point. Like this next record is a little bit more like lyric first, which is cool. It's just a different process. But yeah, up until now, like I'll just get my guitar. I've written a few songs on the piano and I'm just jamming like for 10, 15 minutes, the same song, like 15 different verses. And then
Yeah,
from
yeah.
there, I'll listen back because I usually use just voice memos on my phone and then type things up and kind of edit it together. But yeah, I don't know. I love that process. So this one though, I wanted to try something different. I've really like wanted to be more intentional with my art across the board, how I show up on social media and especially in this
Hmm.
album as like my first fully produced with multiple, instruments and tracks. Um, it's
Well, I think
gonna be
how
good.
each song happens is kind of like you serve the song. Like
Hmm.
you know, like I've been in bands where everybody like okay, everybody brought like something to the table.
Yeah.
Everybody had their own demos, and then we would have jam sessions, and we would tape we'd work on the
Work
songs,
it
and then
out.
we'd work on the jam sessions. Then we'd have like a meeting. It's like, well, some of the kind of really structured songs would make it, but a lot of the jams ended up making it. The things that we didn't think were going to be anything, and then they became something.
That's
And so
cool.
it's like
It's
so
like the
sometimes
collaborative
it's like
magic of a
whatever.
band.
Yeah, it's whatever serves the song, because sometimes
Yeah.
somebody has a song that's so structured and it works. Okay, fine,
Mhm.
everybody puts it, and it was very, very thought out and very structured. And other things were just kind of like it just came out of nowhere, and suddenly like, wow, we didn't even know we were going to do that, and then
Yeah.
that's the one that it actually works. And so, however it comes, is like I don't try to think about it. Like sometimes it comes from very intentional work, and sometimes it's very unintentional, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like a mix of anywhere in between.
Well, and that's one
You know,
thing. So the mentor that I'm working with for this writing group, her name's Greta, and she plays keys in Vampire Weekend, and she was saying that exact thing. It's like, everyone has their own process when it comes to writing. So we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, if I end up picking up my guitar and just channeling some new songs, I still wrote the album, but I'm going to try this
yeah, yeah.
new
You just never know.
lyrics
Like
first.
you can
And
have a
yeah.
plan, and then you can have these plans, and then the planned song. This is one thing that always kind of got me is like you
Yeah.
go back and read music history, there's people like they really worked on, and then suddenly, like at the end of recording session, something just came out of nowhere, and they
Yeah.
didn't even think about it. They just put it down, and then they want to put out the really kind of well intended song, and then the
Mhm.
marketing people say, well, that last song you did, that's the one. And you're like, well, that
Right.
was just a jam. That's just a jam. And then a lot of
Yeah.
times that song that the artist didn't like or didn't think was the
Mhm.
greatest one. Like sometimes we're not the best person to pick our own work. Is the kind
Yeah.
of lesson what I've learned over time is like when you work with a bunch of people, sometimes your favorite song is not what the fans end up like. Your own in your own
Totally.
catalog, the song that you might not think is the one is probably could be the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's good to
Yeah,
have
I
other
think
people around listen.
totally. Well, and that's one thing too that I've loved really working with the Sweet Myths is just to have, bounce ideas off them. And they've been a band already for 6 years, and then before that they were in another band together. So they it's just it's been really cool to have that community. And I have a hire that has been helping me, an assistant. Her name is Corinne. And yeah, having a team is crucial, I think, as a musician, like just to
Yeah,
get things done and for accountability and like, yeah.
it's good to have like a production team and have a
Hmm.
recording engineer and a producer, and then have other people to like bounce things off of. Just because, like I say, you never know. Like I've got a best friend I've had for like over 20 years, and I always
Hmm.
like send things over and say, hey, is this really working? And none that he's the only one, but there's a lot, having people that can hear your raw demo and actually give you real feedback,
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
everybody's gonna want to hear that. There's some people like, I'm not, what do I want to hear that for? But, but it's cool to be around like-minded, creatives that understand what
Hmm.
you're trying to do,
Yeah.
and because not everybody in
Yeah.
the world is that way. You give something to
Totally.
somebody and like 10 seconds into it, they're already talking and they didn't hear anything. I'm like, okay, I guess they're not the best person to give me.
Yeah. 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 No, I think it's important, the collaboration process, but I definitely am um, selective, I guess, if you will, to who I share ideas with. Just,
Mhm.
I like it when people are honest with me, and um, I can generally tell if people are, interested or not.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you like one of the things like about your EP that you talk about for the 2023, you say it's like Southwest inspired rock, and you actually
Yeah.
mentioned like the CSR, corporate social responsibilities, like a surf rock type of tune. So is that
Yep.
like your surf rock or Southwest? Is that your primary like genre area?
I think it's been a big part of my life, and definitely up until this point, like I said, a lot of the influence that I picked up while I was in New York, I think that is what I want to incorporate in the new stuff.
Mm,
But just like I grew up listening to country and the blues, and even jazz and classical, and I think just sort of that Southwest feel, to me, it's like, yeah, country, a little bit of like
yeah, I know it's kind of
Southern, like rock
even
vibes,
like an Eagle vibe a little bit, maybe like Eagles.
yeah, a little bit. I think the Lonely Rider and On the Fence are very much like you can imagine driving through the desert, or like,
Hmm.
riding a horse, or being like an outlaw in an old spaghetti
Yeah,
western. It's
yeah,
like those are kind of the visuals that I think of. And I don't know if when I wrote those songs that was intentional, or if that's just what came out of me, because that's, I where I grew up is in Tucson,
yeah.
Arizona. Um, and the CSR single, that was I wrote that initially in response to the No Doubt movement a few years back,
Mhm.
the pipeline that they were building in the Dakotas. And so, um, it wasn't necessarily like going to be a surf rock tune. It just, at the time I was playing in an all girls like pop punk band, and like
And that
that's
was the
pretty
kind of
much the
track.
level that yeah,
Yeah.
there's just like I feel like screaming and playing this guitar as hard as I can, and I don't know how to play very well, so this is what's going to
Well,
come out.
punk's always been a good place. When you think about the Clash, when the Clash first started,
Yeah,
they didn't have the sophistication that they had by the time they got to Combat Rock or Sandinista. They were just like a
yeah,
straight punk band.
yeah, just
But there's
loud
something
and
about punk.
up
Yeah,
front.
I mean, I like bands like like I've always been in bands like Husker Du and the Replacements and a lot of stuff on SST. Uh,
Yeah.
so I've always been into that kind of what I call the punk aesthetic, which is
Mm.
this kind of Kurt Cobain kind of gave it a face. That is
Yeah.
a legitimate art form because you can be very emotional, you can be very direct,
Mhm.
and it's honest. Because it kind of
Yeah.
came out of like all the hair bands, like the Rats and the Motley Crues of the world. They all seem kind of like overly produced and kind of
Mm.
like maybe had this image. It's kind of okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of cartoon like, and you're
Yep.
like, okay, well, what is? Can't we get something more real? Can we get like a Neil Young
Yeah.
kind of like Buffalo Springfield real, you know,
Right.
or,
Right.
or Crazy Horse real? And so
Yeah.
I loved about like Kurt is he brought that kind of Crazy Horse aesthetic that his punk was really deep. And I think
Mhm.
Neil Young
Mhm.
actually identified with him and had conversations with him because he could see that where he was going.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
could see that he
Yeah.
would have been that level of artist going in that direction, doing that kind of
Mhm.
Crazy Horse kind of experimental work,
Yeah.
which I think is a kind of awesome when you can do that. And I was always into the Flying Burrito Brothers, Graham Parsons. I always like
Okay.
Graham Parsons, great, kind of did this cosmic country, which
Yeah.
was this
Yeah.
kind of like the Eagles kind of took it and tamed it down. But what he
Mhm.
did with the Flying Burrito Brothers was really unique. And I've always been like a very big fan of that kind of country. I mean, he used to hang with Keith Richards, and a lot of what Exile Main Street is influenced by Graham Parsons. It's influenced by
Yeah.
his kind of mindset. So I've always been a very big fan of that kind of when people go that direction.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's just, I don't know. I think the storytelling and the honesty is a big part of it. Just from where the song comes from, but performing, I get such a high from it, and so it's like,
That's then you really should be doing it.
yeah, and I want, whenever we are playing a show, like, I love I want to the audience to feel the same way that I do, and I feel like rock can be loud and it can be over the top, but it's like, it's real, and it's like the best feeling when, the band just locks in, and it's like, even if somebody messes up, you
Yeah,
go
we
with
go
it
with
'cause
it.
it's,
I mean, that's
yeah,
the whole
it's,
point of rock is
yeah.
kind of like outlaw country. Rock
Mhm.
is like,
And I
Johnny
love
Cash.
outlaw country.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the Folsom Prison
Yeah.
Blues. I love Johnny Cash, the Man in Black. I like all his kind of like outlaw thing was like, yeah, I'm just
Mhm.
gonna go and do it,
Yep.
and I'm gonna go and say these things. Have these songs. They're like, wow. He's
Yeah.
like, like Boy Named Sue is like, wow, that's a crazy song. The type of topics he could take on
Yeah.
because he was able to go into a different mindset. Was like, it's not just about I lost my girlfriend. I'm gonna
Right.
go into these stories, and I always liked the country music that was a story. It was actually
Yeah.
telling a story. Americana, that's
Mhm.
a story where you actually. That's why I like the idea you're talking about concepts because some of the things going on today in this kind of beat focused music world is
Yeah.
people have lost the story. They're just going for like the crypt note. They're going for like the
Right.
quick.
Like, let's make the hit.
It's like fast food music. It feels good when you first
For a
get it.
second.
Is
Yeah.
it going to actually sustain itself more than 20 years? Like, will you
Yeah.
remember that 5
Yeah.
years, 10 years from now, like something more substantial? Like, would it be a Folsom Prison Blues? Probably not. Would it
Yeah.
be combat rock? Probably not. Would it be
Yeah.
anything Kurt did? Probably not. So that's why I'm hopeful when I see artists like you that are still trying to do what I call like, heart music, that is actually
Totally.
coming from control.
Yeah, and I think, especially if, when I curl my hair and like put my contacts in and stuff, like there's a lot of pressure to be this like beautiful woman. And I think I'm lucky that I'm my mother's daughter. But at the same time, like I don't see myself that way. Like when I'm at home, I'm just like doing my thing. I'm in yoga pants. Like, of course I love
So
dressing
do
up
you
and
have to
it's
do it with
fun, but
the stagecraft? So the stagecraft thing, like a
yeah,
lot of artists, like even if you like, like Mick Jagger
yeah.
presents himself in this kind of other him,
Hmm.
other version of himself.
Yeah.
If you actually talk to him, he's like a business guy.
Yeah.
He's like an
Yeah.
English gentleman business guy. He doesn't project that at all, right?
Right,
But
right.
when he goes on stage, he becomes this it's like a Freddie Mercury transition.
Hmm.
Even like Prince, he could project all these characters, or Bowie, or Lady Gaga. So do you
Totally.
feel like when you go on stage, you have to project like the other stage you version?
I don't feel like I have to. I think I could just go on and just like show up and sing because I know that that's like what I'm there to do. But I think for me it's fun because you do step into this other persona. Like it's I enjoy that. I used to make costumes. I actually was when I first moved to New York, I was there because I thought I wanted to work in fashion. So I was a costume designer for a little bit. And I realized
Hmm.
like, okay, music is really where it's at, and more so. Um, so yeah, for me, it's fun to put on fake eyelashes and do the whole thing, but it's all a lot of effort too. So it's like,
Yeah, it's a lot of work to do the stagecraft.
yeah, and just like time management. It's like, okay, so I got to drive there, but I also have to get ready for an hour, and then it's like, I don't know. I think it's for me, it's part of it, and but I also, you know, if it wasn't fun for me, I don't think I would do it because I think
You
it's
wouldn't do it,
like,
yeah. It's a lot of
yeah,
work.
because well, and it's not just that, it's just I think the pressure of like being a woman, it's like
Yeah,
people have a
expectations.
certain, yeah, exactly. And for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna show up glammed out and like a fun outfit because I why not?
Mhm.
But I'm also gonna show up like as with the attitude of like, it doesn't matter what I wear because I'm just here to like make some badass music and like
Oh,
make
yeah, you
people
come in on the
dance
stage
and like,
like a Joan Jett, or like,
yeah,
you come in with an attitude like, "It doesn't matter. I'm here, and I can stand up with any of these people, and I can kick ass," like with PJ
exactly.
Harvey. Like, PJ Harvey
Exactly.
can show up glammed out, or she can show up, "I'm a
Yeah.
punk rocker." Like, it doesn't really matter either way, because she is. She can show up
Mhm.
like a Liz Phair. Liz Phair can show up on stage and just blow everybody out because she's just
Totally.
an awesome songwriter.
Mhm.
And I always respected, like, even if I get into like my old school stuff, but the Blake Babies, and Juliana Hatfield. I always liked the fact that she just went out there and just
Yeah.
did her. And sometimes she did do herself, and she's kind of not glammed out, and she's more
Yeah.
kind of understated. And then when she wanted to, she'd glam out. It's like I felt like wearing something glam, and she did, but it didn't really
Yeah.
matter because she's just a substantial songwriter. And
Yeah.
if
And I
she
think,
chooses to come out there, however, it's like I'm not there for how she's going to present. I like how she presents her songs.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm
And
there
and
for the
that's
music.
I think that's the most important part. Like I get excited because I like to think about like, okay, what am I gonna wear? Like I like to imagine like how the show is gonna go and like, visualize and all that stuff. So it's like that's part of it for me. But I think at the end of the day, it's like yeah, it doesn't really matter what I wear. Like I think it's really just I want to give it the best performance that I have,
I think it's the
in me.
attitude.
So
I think it's your
yeah.
attitude. It's kind of like how you approach it. Like if you come out there, like just having a punk aesthetic, like, or having like a glam aesthetic, it would be like a Bowie. Bowie would
Hmm.
show up at Ziggy Stardust, and he would stay in character
Yep.
even after he got off the stage. He's like a character actor. He would stay I heard he stayed like Ziggy, like the whole time he was Ziggy. He just
You
kind
see
of
my
said, "I'm
poster
gonna
over
leave."
here. Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah, yeah. He was just gonna live Ziggy. He had a
Yep.
habit of getting into like if he was in the Thin White Duke, then he was the Thin White Duke like all the time. I mean, some people
Yeah.
do that, or they don't do it. But I think it's just the fact that you like how you choose to be an artist. If you want to be like a like a method actor as a
Yeah.
musician, musicians can kind of operate in a method acting way. They
Oh,
can
totally.
once they're in tour mode, like Prince during like a certain like the Sign of the Times era, he had this whole thing with the Camille character he created was like a female version of himself, and he would just have this kind of dichotomy of being a
Yeah.
Gemini. That he was going back and forth with it between like the Black Album and his other ideas that he had, and he would just kind of show the dichotomy of his mindset. Sometimes it's like black
Yeah.
and white, sometimes like love and hate, good, bad, and he'd like to kind of dive into it, and he would go into it like a total Gemini. Because the whole thing was Gemini, and
Yeah.
people could, the fans they could key in on, oh wow, he's just projecting like this Gemini thing through everything. And you're
Yeah.
like,
He
wow,
was
that's really
a
cool.
brilliant artist. Like, I think, talk about like visualization and just like he would act, I think I heard a story about like, before he was famous, he would not go into like certain places because he was like in his mind he was already famous. But it worked, He made it like he
Yeah,
blew
yeah.
up.
They projected it.
It's like, yeah, it's just I don't know.
He
I love.
self-actualized. Like, I think Bowie did that
Mhm.
too. Bowie self-actualized. He ended up
Yeah.
becoming, you know, that Ziggy. Like, he had not been big at all. And
Yeah.
then suddenly when he became Ziggy, the whole Ziggy thing kind of turned him into the stratosphere, and it was just a kind of this theatrical thing that, he
Mhm.
tried to be just David Jones, and it didn't
Yeah.
work. Nobody bought it. And then he became Ziggy, and then it kind of became this thing. The story became like true. That he came
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
nowhere and he's a ball on fire. He's like, wow, how did that happen? But he worked at it. It wasn't from
Totally.
nothing. He worked on it for years. Nobody saw him, and and then suddenly they see him. And they say it came out of nowhere. No, it's a lot of work.
I mean, that's how it happens, I had a coach last year who just was reminding me, she's like, what like where do you see yourself? Like, okay, who do you have to be to or who do you have to become to be that person? Like that version of yourself, what are they doing? And then do that thing,
Mm,
you know?
yeah,
And
that's the only way to
so
get there.
yeah, yeah. So I had a phase where I wore a really big blonde wig, not to like copy Dolly Parton, but I don't know. I was just having fun, and
Yeah.
it really brought out this like character in me that I didn't even realize that I had because when I put it on, I was like, this is just for fun, and then I like became this like ditzy cute girl and just was so excited and
Well,
happy.
that's the
I
thing
don't know.
about the stagecraft. The stagecraft. You think about Lady Gaga. She
Right.
was in New York just being her work, and then she created a mega version of herself. And
Hmm.
that's not exactly her. That's this
Right.
character she created. It's a lot like Ziggy, like a
Hmm.
female version of Ziggy, and it's like she was able to self-actualize all that glam, but it's
Hmm.
not really her, right? It's like she
Yeah.
just, but she could be in that role, and she can be that person. And I think a lot
Hmm.
of musicians that make it, the theatrical that allows them to present it. The ones that really cut through it are ones that just don't just sit there playing, but actually
Hmm.
turn it into an event. Right? Turn
Yep.
your concert where it's your personality and your character that's actually drawing people in. It's not just the song, but it's a combination of how you
Yeah, the whole
present.
experience.
Like
Yeah.
James
Yeah.
Brown was dynamic. He presented this like I am the Godfather, right? So that was his
Mm.
mask was that he was this hyper Godfather of soul, and he carried that off. But
Yeah.
he wasn't just sitting there singing perfect. He had to move around. So maybe the singing wasn't perfect all the time because he's doing all this dancing. But that was
Mhm.
part of the whole stagecraft. Was like how and Hendrix was. I think one time Bill Graham told Hendrix that you need to like not do all the antics and just play it straight. And so one day, like on New Year's Eve in '69, he
Yeah.
actually did a concert where he wasn't playing behind his back, wasn't playing with his teeth, and he told Bill Graham, "Is like, is that good? Is that good? Like I just played it straight." He said, "Yeah, that was phenomenal. It was phenomenal." He's like, "Well, the next day I'm going crazy," and he just went and did all the tricks because
Oh,
he's
amazing.
doing that, but it
Yeah,
did kind
yeah,
of detract from the sound. But it was part of his persona that he was this
yeah,
great guitar player, but he liked to have fun with the antics and jumping and flipping and doing all this stuff, and that was, detrimental to the if you wanted to sound perfect, doing all that's not going to make it sound perfect. It's going to
right.
drop off direction to add showmanship. And
Yeah,
so I think that
yeah.
becomes like a balance with all musicians that like, how far do you balance that? You know?
Yeah, that was something I definitely was thinking about a lot last summer because I think we especially when we would do, like, these 45-minute sets when we were only playing original music, I mean, we were just, like, bringing the energy way up, and it was almost, like, hard to pull back at all, if
But
you know what I mean?
yeah, it's hard to get out of it.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
When you
so,
go that
like, I'd be, like, on the floor with my guitar, and I'm just, like, screaming into the mic, and it's like, "Oh, man, I don't know how good this sounds." So, I think I finally found, like, a
in
balance.
between.
Yeah, because, honestly, I don't regret it, and I'm just happy that, like, we can pull off shows like that, but, um
Well, it's all the energy of the moment. Sometimes like a
yeah,
moment needs that, and
yeah,
other times
yeah.
the moment needs something else. It's like you kind of like you give yourself like a lot of
Definitely
times
feed
when
off
I
the
talk
crowd,
to
yeah.
you, you find out that like you don't like sometimes your stage persona like after you get off stage you don't even remember that you did stuff. Right. Sometimes you
It's
can get
true.
into it. You can kind of get into like a zone where it's like, whoa, and then you go back and listen to the tape. Like, oh wow, watch the tape, and you're like, well, I didn't even know I was going that crazy. But
Yeah.
that it's kind of like what it is. If you get so into it, it's
Mhm.
so driven by like all these things as musicians that you kind of get into a trance of the moment, of
Yeah.
the energy of the moment, and you get brought into it. And there's nothing wrong with that if you know how to actually, be able to come down from that. That's probably the biggest problem a lot of musicians
Yeah.
have is like they get into those moments and they don't know how to come down from it. And then
Yeah,
that can
yeah,
be
you gotta
detrimental.
ground yourself.
Yeah, to find
Yeah.
ways to be able to handle yourself and because it does, you're on and then you're off. It's like that drop off can be dangerous if you don't know how to handle it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the post-show, blues can be a real thing, but the past 2 years, like, we've been playing pretty consistently, like, about a show a week, and, um, I mean, I'm just so grateful because I think it's really helped me to become a better performer and musician, but, this year, we're trying a different strategy and just trying to be more selective, so that way, 1, I can focus on
Mm.
writing and recording, but also just to make those shows a little more special, but I wonder,
Yeah, you don't want to burn
it's
yourself
like
out on the road. Some road managers
yeah.
will have you going like to the point where they burn you out.
Yeah, well, and,
You know.
I'm really grateful that I do have, like, some side marketing work for that reason because I don't necessarily have to be playing a show every single night, It gives
Yeah,
me a little bit of a steady
breathing
income
room.
to help. Yeah, yeah, um, and, I mean, we'll see, like, this past year has been the first year where I've been really able to manage both of those things that like a happy medium, because I think
I think
ideally I'd
that's a
love to be
dream.
doing yeah, it totally is. I mean, the dream would be doing music 100% full time, but honestly, like I think it took me a while to even get to this point, So I'm happy. I'm
Yeah,
just seeing where things are gonna go um and I think the biggest thing that I really wanna work on is just the craft itself this year, I think the performance stuff we got down, like, I think,
yeah.
it's yeah,
Well, I think
it's
it's
the
cool
best feeling in
when
the
you go
world,
on the
so
road when you go on the road and you actually develop like songs that came from being on the road. Because what happens
yeah.
as you become a road going musician, sometimes the albums that are conceived from being on the road, right?
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
material, when your band gels and you actually get good,
Totally.
really, really connected, that the songs you play off of the road can be
Hmm.
very powerful because you've got your craft and you know how to engage an audience, you've got feedback. It's kind of a great experiment because if you can try new material in front of an audience and they dig it and you
Hmm.
perfect it while you're on tour, then it
Yeah.
can kind of become like a really good test
Come
bed
come
for
back,
your
record it
next
while
record.
it's hot.
Yeah, because you've got all
Totally.
these ideas and you can see immediately back to it or not, and then
Yeah.
you know it inspires you when you're in that unit, you know, putting that stuff together. I always love, you know, COVID kind of
Yeah.
took away that from some bands. You know, they couldn't do that. And now it's cool that bands are able to do that again. Um,
Yeah, well, especially like, sometimes you're still working out the ideas behind a song. So I think I agree with you 100%, to test it out. And um, I mean, I've started my band over like 6 different times. So to be playing with the same people the past year has just been like a dream, because we
that's
got to
great
that point,
when you
like we're
finally
like
get the right
refining the
lineup.
songs. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Because
um,
getting the lineup is always tricky. I mean, sometimes it doesn't happen right off the bat. Sometimes you got to
yeah.
get the right. You know, sometimes you're lucky and you get the like even the Beatles that it wasn't exactly that they had other guys in there. Pete Best, you know, it wasn't exactly what you thought it was. There's
Yeah.
a lot of bands that actually had like other members that you just don't know about, or
True.
they're kind
Yeah,
of
before they
minimized.
get to the point of the public eye or whatever.
The public eye, you get the guy, the full
Yeah.
band everybody got to see. But yeah, it's a process to find, you know,
Mhm.
the right fit. It is a you know, I think it's like sports. Like you really is a lot of teamwork in a band.
Totally.
It's a kind of a team kind of thing. And it's even different because there's like a lot of unspoken things. You know, once you
Yeah.
get a band together that's really tight, just looking at your bass player or looking at the drummer, you give them that look, and then they know what you mean. You know, but once you get
Mhm.
into a certain thing, it's like just high and hand coordination, know what you want. You know, they can kind of go where you're going. You know, that's
Totally,
why I always like when I
totally.
get my band and they actually know where I'm going. Then I'm like, that's Nirvana for me.
Yeah. Oh, man. You just lock in and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, you're locked in
You're
with the
cruising.
drummer, the bass player locks in, and then yeah, everybody's locked in, and you're like, wow, that's so perfect when that works. You know,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
so it's like the best thing.
Yeah. It really is, and yeah, this just, since I moved to California, this is like the 3rd iteration of the band, the group, and, yeah, it feels pretty good, so, we'll see. See what happens.
Well, we look forward to you know, seeing your work. It's gonna probably be like summer this year or springtime.
Yeah, well, so actually CSR is out now. It came out in November, and I shot a
Okay.
video for it in December. So that music video is gonna be released in February and next month. And then, the
Oh,
first
awesome.
single off of the EP is called Satellite, and we just got the mastered version back, this weekend. So that's gonna come out, in March, and then Lonely Rider will be what is the month? April. And then yeah, EP will be May,
So
right before
spring.
summer. We're planning to do some touring and some shows and stuff. So mhm.
That's awesome. So, Amy, when the EP drops, if you ever want to, you know, do an album release episode and talk about it, let us know. Because we're
Okay,
into
cool.
doing that. We've done that with a bunch of other artists we've done before. That kind of have like a
Awesome.
release day, uh, just to kind of give people a picture of the record and stuff. And then we can even videos. You know, here we can actually run the video, you know,
Okay,
excerpts or watch, you know, the whole thing. We've done that before for a lot
cool.
of other bands. So we're into
Okay.
that. And yeah,
I love
we
that.
want
Yeah.
everybody to check out your link tree. Check out your link tree because it will be clickable when we fully publish. And
Nice.
we always ask people to support every artist. So once you go to that link tree, everywhere you can listen to Courtney McKenna, please do that. Please playlist, download, subscribe, favorite, like, you know, that's how artists today get
Absolutely.
recognition in the way the systems work. So please make sure you subscribe, like, follow, download anything you can purchase. that's what you do to support artists today. So we do wholeheartedly want you to check out Courtney McKenna and do that for her. So thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much for
much.
being on the show.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the follow-up episode.
Well, thank you and have a great night. And we look forward to all your work. And we definitely will be pushing it up everywhere that we podcast. We'll be sending you a landing page for this so everybody will be able to get everything off of one thing. And
Awesome.
hopefully out everywhere podcast can be heard by tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, rock on.
Yeah. Good night.